Since childhood, I have been interested in birds and fascinated by migration. From the tiny hummingbird to the huge stork, birds make their amazing journeys year after year. But people are migratory creatures too. Anthropologists tell us that all human beings alive today are descendants of a gene pool of people who lived in East Africa about 200,000 years ago. As their population grew, some migrated south and some west across to Africa, and some moved north and crossed into the Middle East. Then some took a left turn into Europe, and others moved east, populating Asia, Australia, Polynesia. Eventually, some migrated across to North America, spreading from Alaska to the tip of Tierra del Fuego within a few thousand years. To be a human is to be in motion. The Bible is also the story of migrations. The central story of the Hebrew Scriptures is about a mass migration out of Egypt. Later, there's a forced migration into exile in Babylon, and then another migration of return. When Jesus arrives on the scene, he's constantly on the move, a migrant Messiah. Foxes have holes and birds have nests, he said, but he had no Holiday Inn with a nice soft pillow for his head. His primary call is follow me, a call to join him in motion. The Acts of the Apostles is similarly a book of journeys, and the last word of Revelation is come, a call to movement. The Bible is a book of migration. How strange it is that religious people tend to settle down and stop moving, stop dreaming, stop questioning, stop exploring. They trade the adventurous pathway of discipleship for the heavy stone architecture of the religious industrial complex. The great spiritual migration is a challenge to Christians to wake up, climb out of our ruts, venture out of our temples and tombs, and hear the call to migration arising in our souls. This call to forward movement is especially important at this moment in history. There are many people who are afraid. They want to regress into the old-time religion, but they forget that the old-time religion was the religion of slavery, segregation, chauvinism, and environmental destruction. The great spiritual migration is a call forward into a just and generous form of Christian faith and discipleship that challenges us to become better people who live the good news of Jesus Christ in our daily lives. That's the way of life, and that's the path forward.
Brian, we've taken questions from your readers about the book, and we'll use these questions as a guide for our conversation today.
Great.
What's one of the interesting things about organized religion is how much we spend time talking about what we're preserving.
Yeah.
And so organized religion in that way is kind of like a museum. You're there to conserve and preserve something for generations. What would you say about that?
Well, sadly, some of the things that we preserve and conserve unintentionally are some things we really have to leave behind. Look, there are valuable things to be preserved, no doubt. But let's be honest. Racism is being preserved in our churches. Patriarchy, the idea that men run the show. In a lot of our churches, every area of society, we've still got a long way to go, but we're moving more and more toward women being treated as equals. But many of our churches, they are far, far, far from being anywhere close to the tables where the power is exercised, right? And sometimes it just breaks my heart, but it feels like, a friend of mine says religion can be a weapon of mass distraction. And so we're really well organized to preserve old arguments, from 300 years ago, 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago. We'll keep those arguments going so that we don't discuss the critical issues we face today. So it's understandable, but it's heartbreaking. And I suppose there's reasons to get angry about it, but eventually I think we just have to take a deep breath and say, what are we going to do about it?
You write that there must be a better way to be Christian. What do you mean?
Well, Sam, the sad truth is we Christians don't tell the truth about our history. A lot of times we just don't know it. We've never been told it. But in our history, the Christian faith has been linked up with some pretty ugly things. And we've got to get realistic about that. Jesus said, you better take the the stick out of your own eye before you try to take the splinter out of others. So we Christians have to face some of these truths of our history, that our faith has been connected with racism. Our faith has been connected with destruction of the earth. We misquoted a verse in Genesis to say we had the right to plunder the earth, you know. Our religion has been connected to wars and crusades and witch burnings, and even today there are people who are afraid of Christians because they're trying to take away their civil rights, and they're threatening them, you know. Mm-hmm. And here's the irony. If you look at that image of a Christian as a judgmental, angry person who's trying to pass laws to make everybody else feel marginalized, right? That's very different from Jesus, who goes around healing people and touching people and inviting people to the table and paying them uncommon, unprecedented respect and appreciating and valuing their dignity. So here's the irony. Wouldn't it be nice if we Christians decided that we actually wanted to be like Christ, rather than fitting in with some notion of the old-time religion that very often is taken from one generation or 2 or 3 generations ago? What would happen if we actually recentered our focus on becoming Christ-like people?
What do you think is the profound conversion needed in Christian life today?
In the book, I use this phrase conversion because we usually apply it to everybody else. All those pagans out there have to be converted to become like us, right? And we've had a long history of telling other people they need to be converted. But as I was just saying, maybe now it's our turn to actually hold up the mirror and look at ourselves and say, how do we Christians need to be converted? You know, here's the irony. We have a lot of people in our church who are anxious about declining numbers, the rising average age. I like to call it the shrinking and wrinkling of the church. And very often what we want to say is, all those other people, they need to learn to appreciate our music. And, you know, and we make it sound like the problem is all with them. Maybe now, though, it's time for us to say, this religion has been around for 2,000 years about. Maybe it's time for us to go back and have a kind of reboot and to get back on the path of following Christ.
In your introduction, you use this vivid image of Jesus kidnapped.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
Well, this is one of our great problems today, that everybody likes to use Jesus for their cause. So you would think that, you know, Jesus were, I sometimes say he's like the hood ornament on the Hummer of Western civilization, you know, or like in those hostage situations where they take someone and put them in front of a camera and make a false confession. We turn Jesus into the mouthpiece of ideologies that are just the opposite of what he stood for. And one of my great blessings is I grew up in a family where we read the Bible a lot. And one of the great blessings of being a pastor, as you all know, is you actually have to preach from it. You're in it every week. And when you are reading the Gospels and you think, that image of Jesus, this revolutionary, forward-thinking, barrier-breaking, bridge-building leader, we've got to get the real Jesus back.
Brian, can you talk a little bit about the distinction that you make between organized religion and organizing religion?
Very often, our religions are organized, very tightly organized, but they're organized for the wrong purposes. Often they're organized to keep clergy employed, let's be honest. They're organized to keep buildings up, right?
Yeah.
But you think, what's going on in our world? We've got an environmental crisis that is not going away. No matter how long people deny it, it's only going to get worse. We've got this weird problem of more and more money is funneled to a smaller and smaller group of people, leaving more and more people left behind. That's not going away. We've got to address it. And Jesus has so much to say about poverty. We've got problems of war. I mean, we know now that if we go to war, what's the old saying? Whatever World War III will be like, World War IV will be fought with stones and sticks, because we know it'll just bring everything down. And so here we've got these real problems. And the question I hope we can grapple with is, how could Christians be organized? How could churches be organized to address the critical problems that are matters of life and death? So that's to move from religion organized for self-preservation to religion organized for the common good. That is my dream. Go ahead.
Well, what I love about this distinction is, when I think organized religion, I think something that doesn't want to change.
Yeah.
So it's organized to prevent change, to conserve what somebody else has already done. And when I think organizing religion, I think of something that's generative, that's in the process of becoming something else.
Yes.
And so one seems really static to me,
Yeah.
while one seems very dynamic.
Yes.
And we certainly live in a world, I think, that needs a dynamic faith and dynamic church.
I mean, you think about the changes that are going on in retail, right, with internet buying. You think about the changes that are going on in music, with everybody being able to get huge amounts of music on a tiny little device. You think about all the changes in business and with the cloud and so on. I mean, every dimension of life, we're in this civilizational shift. And so the idea that we would be able to bring our old organizations that really were developed in a colonial, sometimes pre-industrial, sometimes industrial world, that they would just be able to be transported. I mean, it's silly. Let's just be honest, it's silly.
I even think like our architecture, some of our older architecture is built in such a way to say, this is going to be here and it's never going to change. I mean,
Yes.
they're like fortresses that
Right.
keep people out or keep change at bay, as opposed to, places that are going to invite in forces that might change.
Yes, yeah. Well, and here's the other thing, though. The fact that we're organized and we know how to organize is a good thing. We need organization, but we just need this flexibility, and we need to be organized for the right purposes. And one of the most important questions all of us can ask, especially clergy and especially church leaders, is what should we be organized to accomplish? And I'm sad to say that we can go many years without asking that question, as you know. And sometimes when we ask it, here's what we're organized, to hope that people will come back for one more week.
Yeah.
Boy, there's needs that call us way beyond that, and life will be more interesting when we're organized for better purposes.
Do you also think it's valuable for preachers to really live into the teaching role and give people permission to ask questions about their faith and to think critically for themselves
Yeah.
in light of their circumstances and their relationship with God?
Boy, this is, I think, it's a different business to be a pastor whose job is to make sure that everybody checks off they believe this, and different denominations have different lists, but most of the lists are pretty long. And to get people to get it right, that's a lot of work. Very different to be the curator of a space where people ask their honest questions.
Yes.
In a sense, here's what you need to believe is a way of saying, and don't think about it anymore.
Right.
Very different than saying, here's the mystery that we're gathered around, here are the challenges, here's the ethic that we're called to, and then we've got a lot to talk about. Oh, very, very different job. But a way more life-giving one, I'm sure you'll agree.
Your questions are faithful.
Yes, that's right. To tell people the fact that you're asking a question is a sign that you get it. I was just preaching last Sunday, and in the passage where I preached, Jesus asks question after question after question. So if we want to follow the example of Jesus, we'll be asking a lot of questions.
I think the distinction you make, I mean, while on the one hand it might sound to people like, oh, there's a lot that's wrong with the church. I mean, we say all the time, or you hear all the time, the church is dying. And I just wonder if sometimes we're not doing that to ourselves.
Yeah.
And by making the shift that you're talking about, we're actually freeing the church up to live again. I mean, that I don't know that the church is dying as much as we are choking ourselves with an inability to change and grow and migrate. And this actually is a pathway to new life for the church that excites me. I mean, there's an exciting element to this.
I couldn't agree with you more. Here's the irony. I think people tell the narrative of decline to wake people up. Hey, we gotta change. But there comes a point where it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Okay, we're waking people up. Now let's start talking about the narrative of pregnancy, rebirth, a new journey. Well, thank you so much for being with us for this discussion about the introduction to the Great Spiritual Migration. We hope you'll be part of our next conversation about the spiritual migration.